Good Sangpo to all the viewers. Welcome to Physics Lesson Key Stage 5. I'm Norbu Wangdi, teacher of Gongzim Ugyen Central School. Before I introduce the topic of the lesson, let me ask you one question. Why do you think you are able to see me right now in BBS television? And we are able to communicate. I'm able to share information. Why do you think? This is because the answer is because of modern communication system. And this is the topic that we are going to learn today. Before we really start the topic on communication system, let me ask you one question. Can you think of the communication system that existed in Bhutan in early 1950s during the time of our second Dukalpo? At that time, the communication in Bhutan was people had to carry the messages from one place to another. For instance, in those olden days, if Desi of Punakha want to communicate with Chesepelop, someone from Punakhazong had to carry the messages, and it took a weeks, even a month, to share the information or to pass the messages from one place to another place. However, today in our time, the communication has become very easy. It's so fast that no matter in which part of the world we live in, instantaneously, we are able to communicate with our friends, with our relatives, and share the informations. Because today we use the communication with the help of internet, radio, televisions, mobile phones, etc. And the main mechanism behind the modern communication system is electromagnetic waves. Before we proceed into the actual lesson, let me tell you what you should know at the end of this lesson. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to define communication and communication system as applied in physics. You should be able to name 3 elements of communication system. At the same time, you should be able to define some basic terms which are crucial in the study of communication systems. Without these basic terms, it is difficult to understand the communication system as applied in physics. The next one is you should be able to briefly explain the working of communication systems with the use of 3 main elements. In addition, you should be able to define 3 methods of propagation of electromagnetic waves. Also, you should be able to understand the term signal and bandwidth. With this, let's start our lesson now. First, let's try to define what is meant by communication in physics. In physics, communication means it's a mechanism of sending, processing, and receiving messages through electrical means. But what is communication system? It's a system which enables the act of information transmission. This is how we define communication and communication system in physics. I hope you are with me. Now, we have learned the definition of communication and communication system. And the next, let's look at what are the 3 main elements that help us to communicate in modern communication system. They are number 1, transmitter, and its function is to collect the information from the source, then convert it into a suitable electrical form of signal, then it will transmit through the second element that's called communication channel. Communication channel is a device. It can be wired or wireless, which carries the message from transmitter to the receiver. The next element we have is called receiver, which receives the message which is being transmitted by the transmitter through communication channel. And then function of that receiver is to demodulate, meaning it will extract the original message which is being transmitted from the transmitter, and that original message is extracted by the receiver. So all in all, there are three main elements of communication system. There are transmitter, which is used to transmit the message in electrical forms. Then we have the communication channel, which the function of communication channel is to carry the messages from transmitter to the receiver. And the last, we have the receiver, which will extract the original messages which is being transmitted by the transmitter. And when we are talking about communication system, there are two modes of communication system. First one is called point-to-point mode. We say communication is point-to-point mode when communication takes place between single transmitter and the receiver. For instance, if you are making call to your friends, and if you are at Thimphu and you are making call to your friend who is at Tashigang, then here involves only single transmitter. That means your mobile phone acts as a transmitter, and the mobile phone of your friend who is at Tashigang, who is receiving the call, will act as a receiver. So in point-to-point mode of communication, only a single transmitter and a single receiver is involved. In such cases, we call it as point-to-point mode of communication system. We have also another mode of communication system, and that's called broadcast mode. Okay, I'll explain you the meaning of broadcast mode. For instance, right now I'm talking through BBS television, and BBS television acts as a single transmitter. At the same time, when I was sharing the information and knowledges on communication system through BBS television, some of you are at Tashigang, some of you are at Samsi, some of you are at Ha, listening to my informations. Here, in this case, BBS television from Thimphu act as a single transmitter, and there are multiple receivers in 20 zonghaks. Your television in your place act as a receiver. So in this case, for a single transmitter, there are multiple receivers. In such cases, we call the mode of communication as broadcast mode. I hope you are with me. Before we proceed further, let us look at some of the basic terminologies that is very crucial in understanding the communication system. Without having understood these basic terminologies, it's a bit difficult to study about communication system. Therefore, I will introduce few basic terminologies that are required to learn about communication system. First one is, it's called transducer. Transducer is a device which converts one form of energy into another form of energy. For instance, microphone is a transducer. It converts electrical energy into sound energy. Another one is photocells, which converts light energy into electrical energy. And in communication system, these are known as transducers. The second basic terminologies we have is attenuation. It's a term referred to the energy of signal which is being lost during the transmission. During the transmission of signals from transmitter to receiver through communication channel, the strength of signal is being lost on the way. That amount of loss of energy is called attenuation. The third basic terminologies we have is signal. It's a messages in electrical form. When the message from transmitter has to be transmitted through the communication channel, it has to be first converted into electrical signal. Therefore, we define signal as electrical impulse. Therefore, we define signal as electrical impulse that is used to convey the information. Further, the signal is divided into two. First one is called analog signal and another one is called digital signal. Analog signal is a signal which continuously varies with respect to time, whereas digital signal varies with discrete steps. Therefore, digital signal has got only two values, 0 and 1. Mathematically, we can represent analog signal by sine wave, whereas digital signal can be represented by pulse shape, because it is varying only with two values, whereas analog signal continuously varies in voltage and current with respect to time. The next basic terminologies we should know is modulation. Modulation is a process of mixing of signals with low frequency with another signal having a high frequency, and that signal having high frequency is called carrier wave. In physics, we can define modulation as process of imposition of low frequency wave on a high frequency wave called wave carrier, and this process is called modulation. Another very important term we should understand in communication system is called a repeater. It's a device. I told you that when signal is being transmitted from the transmitter and when it gets transmitted through the communication channel, some form of energy will get lost. So in this case, repeater plays a very crucial role. Repeater is made up of a combination of both transmitter and receiver. So therefore, repeater will collect the weak signal, it will amplify it, increase the strength of the original signal, then retransmit to the receiver. Therefore, repeater is a device which is made up of combination of both transmitter and the receiver. Now, when we are talking about signal, I have mentioned you about two types of signals. They are analog signals and digital signals. However, in modern communication system, digital signal is preferred more compared to analog signal because it has got advantages, more advantages compared to analog signal. To list some of the advantages, first one, it is easy to separate digital signal from noise, meaning it has high resistance to undesirable disturbances like noise. Second advantage is digital signal consumes less amount of energy. It saves power, whereas in terms of analog, it consumes more energy, as well as it is very difficult to separate it from noise. Another advantage of digital signal is it is flexible in configuring in digital communication system. However, we can convert signal from one form to another form. For instance, we can convert analog signal into digital signal form, and that process is known as sampling. If we convert analog signal to digital signal, then that process is known as sampling. And if we do the vice versa in reverse form, that is, if we convert that digital signal back into analog signal, then that reverse process is called reconstruction. Okay, with this now, let us look at the working of modern communication system with the use of three essential elements: transmitter, communication channel, and receiver. The transmitter receives the message from the information source and it will convert the signal into a suitable form which is required for transmission. and that suitable form of signal is being transmitted through communication channel. For instance, if the message is in voice form, transducer which is present in the transmitter will convert it into electrical signal. That electrical signal is being transmitted through communication channel, and that communication channel will carry the message to the receiver. However, on the way, the signal of message has become weak. The repeater will strengthen the signal and it will retransmit to the receiver. The receiver, in return, it picks up the signal and it will extract the original signal. Once the message is received by the receiver, demodulation will take place, meaning it will extract the original message. This explains the brief working of modern communication system. Now, during the transmission of signals, it has to have certain specifications, certain requirements. Every signal will have certain range of frequencies. For instance, you might have heard that the BBS radio at Samtengang is something that 93 megahertz, while at Sarpang is 88.1 megahertz. It means that BBS radio frequency, BBS radio signal has certain range of frequencies. That certain range of frequencies is called bandwidth. Likewise, radio valley signals will have its own bandwidth. Kuzo FM will have its own bandwidth. Bandwidth is nothing, it's a range of frequencies that signal possesses. Likewise, BBS television will also have bandwidth. It's called bandwidth signal. In the same way, the communication channel, like I have mentioned about optical fiber, for instance, is a communication channel. It helps in transmitting the signals from one place to another form. And I told you that even there are wireless communication channel like electromagnetic waves. They are the wireless communication channel. And even that communication channel will have certain frequencies, meaning the communication channel will allow only certain range of frequencies to pass through it. Therefore, we define the range of frequencies that communication channel will allow as a bandwidth of transmission medium. For instance, the bandwidth of transmission medium of optical fiber is 1 to 1000 terahertz. It means that optical fiber will allow a signal having 1 to 1000 terahertz. It means that beyond 1000 and below 1 terahertz, optical fiber will not allow the signal to transmit through it. We have been now talking about communication system, elements of communication system, basic terminologies used in communication system, and now let's talk about how electromagnetic waves, the propagation of electromagnetic waves helps in transmitting the messages from one place to another place. How electromagnetic waves plays a crucial role in modern communication system. When we are talking about communication system, I told you that modern communication system is possible due to electromagnetic waves. Now let us look at three methods of propagation of electromagnetic waves that help us in modern communication system. The first method of electromagnetic waves propagation is called ground wave propagation. We say electromagnetic waves undergoes through ground wave propagation when radio waves, which is transmitted from the antenna of the transmitter, uses the surface of the earth or the ground to transmit and to reach the receiver. In case of ground wave propagation, in order to efficiently radiate the radio waves, the size of antenna should be 1/4 of the wavelength of that radio waves. And radio waves, it covers only small area. Therefore, it's used to broadcast radio stations, broadcast within a small community. The next type of electromagnetic propagation we have is skywave propagation. In this case, the radio waves use ionosphere of the sky for its propagation. In skywave propagation, the antenna of the transmitter, which is located on the surface of the earth, will emit radio waves, and that radio waves will be reflected back by the ionosphere, and it is retransmitted to the receiver. This type of propagation of waves, which uses ionosphere of the atmosphere, is called skywave propagation. Since ionosphere lies from 65 to 400 km above the Earth's surface, skywave propagation is used to transmit the signals over a long distance. Therefore, it can be used to broadcast radio over a large area. And one thing you should understand is that it's not that all the radio waves having different frequencies will be reflected by the ionosphere. It has got certain limit. The maximum frequencies of radio waves which can be reflected by the ionosphere is called critical frequencies. Beyond that critical frequencies, ionosphere won't reflect that radio waves. In this case, radio waves will penetrate through the ionosphere and propagates through space, and where space wave propagation comes in. The third type of electromagnetic wave propagation is called space wave propagation. In space wave propagation, a high frequency of radio waves is being transmitted from the transmitter, which is based on the earth, towards the satellite. And that process of sending, that process of transmitting high frequency radio waves towards satellite is called uplink. And satellite here in space wave propagation, satellite acts as a repeater. It will receive the electromagnetic waves which is being transmitted by the transmitter. Then it will further increase the strength of the waves and retransmit, and it will send back to the receiver. And that sending back of or retransmitting of the signals or the radio waves towards the receiver is called downlink. Also in space wave propagation, the waves travels in a straight line. Therefore, space wave propagation is used in satellite communication system. Also, since radio waves travels in a straight line, it is used to study the line of sight. Space wave propagation is also used in radio communications, in transmission of television signals over a large area. Because of space wave propagation, we are able to watch BBC News and other international news. This has happened because of space wave propagation. Now let's try to compare these three methods of propagation of waves, electromagnetic waves. First column we have ground waves, second column is sky waves and space waves. Ground waves is used for low frequency range transmission, whereas sky waves is used for frequency range 3 to 30 megahertz. Space wave is used for very high frequency range transmission. And ground waves make use of Earth's surface for propagation, whereas sky waves use ionosphere of the atmosphere And space waves use artificial satellites for propagation of waves. And ground waves is used for transmitting radio signals within a small community, whereas sky waves is used for transmitting radio signals over a large area. Space waves is used for transmitting of TV and radio signals over a large area. Before I wind up the lesson, let us recollect what are the things we have learned in this lesson. First, we have defined communication followed by communication system. After that, we have learned about three main elements of communication system. They are transmitter, communication channel, and receiver. After that, we have learned about basic terminologies like transducer, modulation, signal, etc. Also, we have learned about the brief working of communication system with the help of transmitter, communication channel, repeater, and the receiver. After that, we have learned about three methods of propagation of waves. They are ground wave propagation, sky wave propagation, and space wave propagation. And we have learned that ground wave propagation is used for transmitting radio signal within a small area, and the space wave propagation is used for transmitting radio signal and television signals over a wide area. With this, to conclude my lesson, I have 4 questions for you. The first question for you is explore some applications of microwaves and infrared waves. Second, what will be the situation of life without modern communication system? Third one is, what is the bandwidth of BBS television? Fourth question and the last question for you is, write down some impacts of modern communication. So with this, thank you so much for watching the lesson and spending your valuable time with me. I hope you have enjoyed the lesson and see you in the next lesson. Thank you so much. Kadinche.